Everybody, welcome back. We're doing a live stream today, and we have a special guest, Eric Pratt from Gun Owners of America. And what we want to talk about is what recently happened regarding bump stocks and their legality. We'll get into the mechanics of how we wound up where we are here today. But one thing I just want to preface the video with is that don't ask us for legal advice and don't ask us what we would do, because keep in mind, I'm still a plaintiff in this lawsuit and we're talking about this outside of that. So I'm not going to be able to give you legal advice. Eric's not going to be able to give you legal advice. And all we can do is talk about what's transpired up to this point. We don't want to put into jeopardy anything that we might still be doing within the courts, because the battle's far from over. All right, so with that being said, Eric, thank you for joining me, my friend. It's good to have you back.
Oh, absolutely. It's good to be here with you, Tim, as some very important subjects we got to talk about.
I agree. So let's start off with what the Trump administration did after we had the tragedy in Las Vegas. Obviously, the Trump administration directed his Department of Justice to make some changes to the law. They basically just directed the ATF to make bump stocks go away, correct?
That's right. And here for years, of course, the ATF, even under the Obama administration, had been saying that bump stocks were legal, that they were not machine guns. They didn't convert semi-automatic firearm into machine gun. And so based on that representation, more than 500,000 people, it's estimated, have bought bump stocks and owned bump stocks. And then you're absolutely right. Right after Las Vegas, it was basically a political decision. You know, you will find that, find a way to make them illegal and make them go away. Because even before that, ATF had been called into before Congress, and they were asked, and they said, they are legal under the law, and
Right.
And yet here they've turned on a dime and they've declared them illegal.
So in essence, what had happened was Trump said, make them go away. He wanted to do an end run around Congress, which would have been the appropriate way to go about this. We have a republic for a reason. We elect representatives to debate these issues and vote on these issues. No vote was held. A bureaucracy rewrote the law, and they came back about a year or so later and said, okay, we found a loophole and this is how we're going to go forward with it. And boom, yesterday at midnight, bump stocks became NFA items. And guys, I want to let you know this right up front. A lot of folks have been talking about the merits of, well, if I do this, I'm protected. If I do that, I'm protected. I'm just not going to, do anything at all. Just keep in mind what the ATF is saying, and what they have signaled is that they will enforce this as if those bump stocks are machine guns. So it's really serious. It's not like 922R where they're just going to look the other way. This is something where the Trump administration has given the power to the ATF, and they've just taken the authority upon themselves. And if you're caught with one of these now, today, you face 10 years in federal prison for each device that you are in possession of, and you face up to $250,000 per, if I'm not mistaken, per charge. It starts off at $10,000, but the government can charge you up to $250,000, I believe, is how the statute's written. So it's not a joke. This isn't something to be taken lightly. And it's estimated that 500,000 people own them, but I think over 1 million of them were sold. So there's a lot of them out there in circulation. So now we've been fighting the GOA through their legal representation, asked me to be a plaintiff on the lawsuit. Other people have filed lawsuits. We're aware of four lawsuits in total, so 3 others than our own. And our legal team has been scurrying, trying to seek injunctive relief to have a stay placed on this, so people's property wouldn't have to be surrendered or destroyed. And we raced. I mean, Eric, you were running up to the Supreme Court to file stuff with the clerk yesterday, right at the last minute. I mean, where do we currently stand?
Yeah, scurrying, the way you described it, is appropriate. I was downtown in Washington, D.C. in a meeting with several congressmen, and I get this call from our attorneys. Hey, Eric, where are you? Well, I'm in DC. Are you anywhere near the Supreme Court? Like, yeah, about a block away. Why? We are filing an emergency appeal. I'm going to email it to you. Take it in triplicate, stapled, and take it, with all these, very minute instructions on what to do, which actually is quite fascinating, all the process, because they take it, they bag it, so that they can irradiate it. They want to make sure that the justices aren't subjected to any white powder, mysterious white powder, or anything like that. But anyway, we got it submitted at 3:24 p.m. So that was before, of course, midnight yesterday. And that's very important because we asked the court, even if you rule on this after midnight, we're asking you to consider it as if you had ruled on Monday. And so basically what we did is it's an emergency motion seeking a stay of the ATF's regulation while our litigation is allowed to continue. And so right now, we are the last man standing on this. I mean, this is really incredible. With all the court has denied a stay for all gun owners, for all bump stock owners so far, and ours is the only one pending. The Supreme Court has asked the government to respond to our brief or our motion by 4 p.m. tomorrow. So that tells you 4 p.m. today. So we're not going to hear a decision today. And then tomorrow at 12 p.m., we have a deadline for issuing a reply to the government's brief. So it's very clear that the Supreme Court is taking this very seriously. And let me just clarify what I mean when I say that we're the last one standing. Right now, we're the last hope for getting a stay for the entire country, for getting the courts to tell the ATF, don't enforce this ban on anyone while we argue the merits of this case. Because realize this, even if the Supreme Court denies our application this week and they say, look, there's not going to be any stay for bump stock owners in general, we still go back to the district court or the Court of Appeals to actually start arguing the case. So, Tim, to paraphrase what John Paul Jones said, we have not yet begun to fight. Even if we get denied on this injunction, on this stay of the ATF's enforcement, we still have a case to arguing the merits of the case.
And it may wind up going all the way to the Supreme Court. I mean, we're waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court on our case right now as it relates just to having that stay in place. But then it goes back, if I'm not mistaken, to the circuit courts. And then we actually argue our case, and then it has to work its way back up to the Supreme Court if the lower courts don't give us a favorable decision. Is that true?
That's right. And realize what we've been doing so far, we've really had the deck stacked against us. I mean, think about it this way. There's two types of judges, those appointed by Democrats, and of course, they are going to tend to be typically anti-gun. Then there's those appointed by Republicans. And as a generalization, many of them tend to be rule of law oriented, giving deference to agencies and how they rule and giving them the benefit of the doubt. So when you come before them, trying to convince them, if you're going to get a temporary injunction or a preliminary injunction, you have the burden to prove that there's a high likelihood of winning. So think about it. I mean, if the judge is already sort of predisposed against your position, either because of guns or because of, this whole idea of rule of law, and I'm, just kind of go with what the agency says, then that's a real high standard, and it's a real tough challenge. But when you go to trial, the evidence that we present doesn't have to meet that high bar. And so, Tim, as you know, I mean, you've read our case, you've read what we've submitted. I mean, we have a rock solid case with good arguments, showing how the ATF has acted in a capricious and illegal manner. And you could say we have a rock star witness, former ATF official who was on the ground floor under the Obama administration, looking at the legality, determining that bump stocks were in fact legal, weren't machine guns, et cetera. And so he can show that all this change in policy has been done not based on the law, not based on what a bump stock is or how it works, but that the determination was a political determination. And so when we go to trial, let's say when we go back to the district court or the Court of Appeals, we'll be able to present our evidence in a very methodical manner, but without that high standard of asking the court to quickly make a decision and jump to the conclusion to rule in our favor, because after all, oh, judge, you know that we're certain to win, so give us a preliminary injunction. That's a tough standard to meet. And yet, obviously, we had to try, because let's face it, we knew that midnight of March 25th was coming, and that there would be over 500,000 people who were potentially felons. So we had to go for that injunction, but it's very difficult to meet the standards for that. But just realize, even though it's been a tough going with that, we're going to have a far better case once we actually start arguing the merits of the case.
Yeah. I'm really excited to get this into the court and actually start to hear oral arguments, because I've talked to several folks that are of legal minds outside of our own counsel. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody that's in the industry, in the bump stock industry last night. They called me and we had a lengthy discussion last night. And there has never been a more slam dunk case to be brought before the courts in terms of our arguments. It is clearly unconstitutional and illegal what the ATF has done. Almost everybody of a legal mind that looks at this in an unbiased way will tell you that. Yet we're meeting with resistance at the courts all throughout this process. Everybody, like you said, we're the last man standing with the Supreme Court right now. And even Roberts, you were talking about how we're going against these judges which have political affiliations and many times tend to be activist judges. But Roberts was appointed by a Republican, and he decided against another case and said, no, there will be no stay given. So right. We weren't assigned to Roberts, and so we're currently waiting to hear back. We were told, okay, the court accepted our arguments. They've asked the government to respond, and we'll be able to respond to that, and then we'll see what happens. And we're keeping our fingers crossed. But right now, it seems to me that there's a lot of politics being played, and not necessarily legal arguments. Right now, it just seems like nobody really wants to steal Trump's thunder, and nobody wants to touch this hot potato because of the politics of it. If we were arguing something else like, minority rights or abortion or something else that's a hot topic, that stay would have been given without question. But because we're talking about firearms in the Second Amendment, we have that unfavorable Second Amendment right. Who was it, Clarence Thomas or one of the justices said that the Second Amendment is the right that nobody, I'm paraphrasing, it's the unwanted right of the Constitution or something like that, or not respected right. So anyway, it seems like we're kind of in a weird position right now as we wait to find out what the status is, because last night at midnight, that change happened, and today, people with their bump stocks are technically felons and are technically in possession of a machine gun. And, we're hoping that the Supreme Court swoops in and actually gives us a stay so that we don't have people out there surrendering and destroying their property, so we can actually get this thing litigated and have a proper, hopefully, outcome that's favorable.
Yeah, we really are in a very fluid situation right now as we're discussing this. And, obviously we may be, getting a decision in the next 24 hours. And so, people can certainly be checking our website at gunowners.org. We will be giving updates on the status of our case, and also our Facebook and Twitter pages if people are following us there, so that we can let people know what's happening.